Now, when you're creating a portfolio section, we have a content section called a grid section, and it looks just like this. And you can add images, you can click on it, it can launch an album, and so on. So we showed you how to create albums in a previous video, but this is a section that allows you to link to different albums, and it can be used as kind of like your overall portfolio. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So we're in the back end in the pages section, and we're using this home page to add content sections to. We've already added a couple of content sections, and now what we want to do is we want to add this new section, this grid section. So I'm going to click Add New Content Block, and I'm going to choose the grid. And I'm just going to title this Portfolio. Choose the grid, click Create Block. And now we have our portfolio grid section here, and we're going to click Edit to add our images. But before we do that, we have to realize that if we are creating something like this, it makes sense to create the things that these items are going to link to first. So we're going to actually go back and create a couple of albums. And so I'm going to create a new content block. I'm going to choose album, and I'm going to title this Grid Album 1 and click Create Block. And I have grid album 1 here. Now, I don't want this album to show up on my homepage. So I'm going to choose this little I and exit out so that it won't be seen. And I'm going to take it out of any kind of navigation as well. So it's not going to be there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some images to this album. So I'm going to click Edit. And I'm going to add media. And we've done this in another video where we create albums. I have these images that are already ready to go, so I'm just going to grab these, click open, and it's going to load up all of these images. Once it loads up all these images, we're then going to go back and we're going to go back to our grid page and we're going to link to this album. So I'm going to go back to the pages and I'm going to go into the portfolio section here and I'm going to click edit. So now we want to create an item, and it's going to be just like this, where we create the first item that links to that first album. So I'm going to go, I'm in that grid section, that portfolio section, and I'm going to create that first item. So the label here, we're just going to title it 1. So we know that this is, actually we'll title this album, Grid Album 1. And we're going to upload an image for that section. So I'm going to click Upload New, and I'm going to pick one of these images and click Open. So here's my image here, and I can give it a title if I want to. So this will be 1. I can give it a subtitle, and I can give it a small little description. So something really small like, this is more text, just in case you want to call something out. And then I can link it somewhere. So I can link this grid item to another website. I could link it to another page. So if I want to use these grids to link other places, I can. But in this case, we're using it to link to albums. So instead of typing in a URL like this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to a page I created. And I'm going to use this drop down right here to find that Grid Album 1. And then I'm going to have it open in the same window. I'm going to click Save. And now it's linked to that album. And when I click Create Entry, I now have that item there. So I'm going to create 2 more items really quick. So we'll call this 2. I'm going to upload a new image. I'm going to upload this one. And I'm going to realize, oh, I don't have another album to link it to. So I'm just going to create this entry and go, okay, I need to go back and create another album. So I'm going to go back to my pages. I have Grid Album 1 here. I'm going to create the rest of my grid albums now. So I just wanted you to realize that you need to create the thing you're linking to first. So we're going to create some more albums. So add new. I'm going to say Grid Album 2. Album, create block, and we have Grid Album 2. I'll edit it and click Add Media, and I'll upload some new images. So let's just grab a couple of new images here, open them. And once it's done, I'm going to click done. I'm going to go back to my pages because all my images uploaded. I want to create a third one. So add new, and I'm going to go ahead and say grid album 3. Just kind of keeps it really organized. Click album and create block. Also, I don't want these to be showing up in the page, so I'm going to hide them. And I have these 3 albums created. I want to add images to my last album, so I'm going to add media, add files from my computer, and I'm just going to grab a couple of images real quick so it happens quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm done. So I've created 3 albums now. They all have images, right? And now I'm going back to the portfolio. I'm going to click edit, and we created that second grid item. So now we're going to link it to that second album. So I'm going to use my drop down, click grid album 2, and click save. I'm also going to change this just so that I can keep it really clean and organized to grid album 2. Now I can put a title in here. I can title it 2. I can put a subtitle, and I can put a blurb. So something here. And then I can go ahead and click Save Changes. So what we just did was we created this item that links to an album 1, this item that links to an album 2, and now we're about to create this third item that's going to link to a third album. So let's go back, and we have 2 entries here. We're going to create our third item. So create new, and we're going to title this one Grid Album 3. I'm going to upload an image to represent that item. So I have my third image in there, and I'm going to go ahead and just title this one 3, add a subtitle if I want, and some sort of text that goes here. And now I want to link this to that third album. So I'm going to use my drop down, go to that third album that we created, and click save. And then I'm going to click create entry. So I have my 3 items in here, and now these 3 items should show up on my home page. So let's go ahead and go to the home page and refresh. And this is the page that we've been working on, building out. And here are those 3 items right here. Now, one of the things you're going to notice is that these aren't all cropped exactly the same size. So this one's a little bit shorter, and you can see that white line under there. So when you're adding these images, you're going to want to make sure that you add images that are all cropped with the same ratio, the same size, so that they line up really nicely. I'm kind of a stickler for that. You'll also notice when I roll over, you get the number 1 title, the subtitle, and a little bit more text. You don't want to add a ton of text here, because don't forget, the site's responsive, and when it changes sizes, the area for that text is going to be pretty limited. So you have these rollovers. So now let's go through and look at some of the options we have. But actually, let's click first and show that our albums are loading. So I click this one. Our albums are loading. We have these arrows to click through. And I click on this third one, and we have the albums are loading. Right? Okay. So let's go back and look at some of our options. So the first thing is I'm going to come to this context area, and I'm going to add a title. And we can say portfolio. We can add a little description for the portfolio. We can change the background color. So let's make this super dark. So we'll say a dark charcoal gray. We can come in here and we can add a button like we've done in other videos. We can add alternative buttons and so on. Placement of the button, and we can click save. So we added title, text, and we changed the background color. I'm going to come in here, refresh it, and now you're going to see we have our title, our text, and our background color, right? Okay, so let's go back and let's go to grid settings now. So the first thing is to use it as a gallery. We don't necessarily want to use this as a gallery, so we're marking it as false. But just like in some of the other videos, when we create the albums, we can create space between the images. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this up to like 25, and I'm going to click save. And when we come in here and we refresh, you're going to see that there's going to be space now between these images. So that's how we add space between the images. And now I'm going to go ahead and go into the image overlay. And let's say we don't want it when we're rolling over it, how it's just lightly opaque. We want to go ahead and maybe turn that all the way up to 100 and click save. And when we refresh, you're going to notice when we roll over it, it's like the image goes completely away and you see the background. Right? Okay, so now we can change the number of columns. Currently we have 3 columns, but what if we wanted those images to be bigger, and we knock it down to 2 columns and we save it? So we're going to go from 3 to just these 2, and then this one's going to drop below the first one. So I'm going to refresh, and we now have 2 columns, and so the images get a little bit bigger. And at the same time, we can go ahead and change this to be 4. And now there's going to be 4 across. And so there's a space here for the 4th one that we haven't added yet. So now let's go ahead and go back through here, and we can go ahead and look at our uploaded items. As always, we could delete the ones that maybe didn't work out, and we can go ahead and edit them for SEO reasons. If you want to edit the titles and the description, you can do that. So let's add a couple more entries, but maybe let's change it up and make it look a little bit more interesting. So let's go back to the entries. We have 3 items in here. We're going to add a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th item. Now, if I'm going to add a 4th and a 5th and a 6th album, I should go back to the pages and add new albums like we did before. We added Grid Album 1, 2, and 3. I should add Grid Album 4, 5, and 6. But I'm not going to do that for the sake of this video. Let's just assume that we have those created. So I'm going to create a new entry, and I'm going to give this a title. I'm going to just make this 4. I'll make this 4. I'm not going to do a subtitle and blurb. I just want to show you that if you upload a new item and you do a tall item, like any one of these. So we'll do this one. I want to show you what it's going to look like, and it kind of makes for a unique look. And then we would link this to an album, and I'm just going to link it to one that we already have. So let's just link it to album 1 and click save and create entry. I'm going to do this again, create entry. I'm going to title this 5. I'm going to upload a new image, and I'll upload this one and click open. And I'm going to pretend to link it to an album like we did before. Click create entry, and I'm going to do one more. So create new entry. Here's the 6th one. I'm going to upload a new image. Again, I'm doing all vertical images, as you can tell. Before I did all horizontal. And I'll just go ahead and come down here and pretend to link to an album that I created. I'll make this link to number 3. Click save and create entry. I'm also going to come back and turn this back into 3 columns. So I'm going to grid settings. I'm going to turn this back to 3 columns, and I'm going to click save. Now when I refresh this, you're going to see these first 3 items, and then you're going to see the taller items below them. And when I roll over or I click on any one of these, you get the album. And that's it. That is that grid. So you can add more entries to go below them. You can change the sizes. You can make these images square if you crop them that way in Photoshop, and then load them in. So you have a lot of different options to make this look really cool and make it really functional. Again, you can link to albums that you created. You could link to pages if we created more pages. So if you wanted this to link to your About page and this to your Contact page, if you were to create multiple pages in your site, you could do that. You could link it externally to another item outside of your site. Whatever it is that you want, you can use this in a lot of different ways.